The Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal started calling my plan not initially as a compliment to Bidenomics. But guess what, folks? They're talking about it differently now. It's working. It's working. I'm serious.
Meanwhile,
attitudes around about the economy. His approval rating drops to 37% on his handling of the economy and even lower to 30% for his handling of inflation.
Remember, Mr. Biden inherited a 6.5% growth rate with roughly 1.5% inflation from his predecessor, Donald Trump. Essentially, Biden's big government socialism has turned a booming economy into a bust.
Can anyone else in the service industry please tell me what the is going on this summer? Like, are people out of their COVID money? What is the deal? Because this is the least amount of money I have made in a very long time. And I don't understand. Like, are people less giving? Like, my customer service personality has not changed. I'm just a little jokester. And you're so nice to these people and the tips come back and it's like 10%, 9%. It's like, what's going on? What's going on?
I've worked as a bartender in the 10 plus years that I've been a bartender. She mentioned something about COVID money. I don't really see it being that such. I think it's, I don't know. I don't know if we had too many full moons this year or what, but this has been, my God, the worst summer. It's, even if I do have a great day or a great night, it's just tipping and it's people and it's just, ugh! I felt this to my core!
Alright guys, so we gotta talk about the economy and how regular folks are feeling about the economy, which is just not good, okay? Despite what the Biden administration and the mainstream liberal media is trying to tell people, which is that, hey, Bidenomics is working, right? Everything is great now.
We're back with some breaking economic data.
That's right. Inflation cooled to 3% in June over the year and 0.2% on the month.
Cooling and better than expected. Phil and Pamela, that is the headline from this report.
The best inflation numbers since August of 2021.
1 year ago, inflation in America was 9.1%, and now 3%. It fell fast.
To be at 3%, given where we've come from, I think is an achievement that we should all celebrate.
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
Yeah, let's just forget about the fact that under Trump, right, for the first 30 months before the COVID debacle, you had jobs created of 4.9 million versus Biden's 2.1 million. Real family incomes under Trump were up $6,400. Under Biden, they're down $4,000. Gas prices were $1.87 a gallon. Under Biden, they're near $4 a gallon. Mortgage rates under Trump was 2.65%. Under Biden, it is 7%. I mean, it is damn near impossible to afford a house. Not to mention that housing prices are still at an all-time high despite mortgage rates being so high. Again, it just fundamentally does not make any sense whatsoever why housing is so unaffordable. Inflation under Trump was less than 1.9%, and Biden, inflation hit a record high. Regulatory costs per household under Trump were cut by $11,000, and under Biden, they were raised by $10,000. Okay, these are all real numbers that the American people are feeling. Okay, and this is why you have so many people taking to social media to talk about the state of the economy and how they do not feel richer, they do not feel better, despite what the mainstream liberal media and the Biden administration is trying to brainwash people into believing about the economy. And that leads me to this segment that I want to play here from Joe Rogan, who, in my opinion, I think that it's important, the things that he says, because I think Joe Rogan does represent the independent swing voter. And even Joe Rogan is admitting that, hey, things were much better off under Trump than Biden right now. Take a look.
No one is going to run against Trump in the Republican side and win, because you're not going to get the Trump supporters. They are all in on Trump. Unless he has a stroke, unless something happens that's horrible, they're all in on Trump. If you run against Trump, you're now the enemy of Trump. If I was friends with DeSantis, I'd be like, don't do it. You can't beat that guy. You just can't. When that guy gets out there and he's waving to people and they're going crazy, you're not beating that. There's a fucking, and the fact that he was the president for 4 years and the country was in a great economic situation, and it looked like his policies were actually effective, and that it looked like the unemployment was down, all business was building, regulations were being relaxed, more things were getting done. You know, when you look at it from a policy perspective, if you just look at it on paper, what he did was effective. A lot of people think it was effective. You don't like him as a personality, so you ignore that. Don't do that. Look at it in terms of a policy perspective. People liked the ideas that he was putting forward. And now you're saying like, oh, the wall is raised. Now the fucking, everybody thinks there needs to be a wall. Even the mayor of New York City is now calling to stop immigration into his city. And this was the guy that called it for it to be a sanctuary state. When the reality of what your policies, what kind of actions you put forth, what the results of that are, and those results are highly negative, you're forced to sort of recollect your thoughts and come up with a new perspective. And that's what the mayor of New York City is doing right now. When you just look at what Trump's policies were, and then obviously COVID hits, there's a lot to that, the lockdowns, the economic collapse, all the shit that came with that. None of that is good. And then Trump holds up this like hope to bring us back to where we were when he was in office. You're not going to beat that. I don't think they're going to beat that. I don't think, when you look at the Russia collusion, when you look at the Steele dossier, when you look at all the bullshit they tried to throw at him that we now know is bullshit, not just bullshit, but coordinated bullshit. When you look at the fact that they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story and that 51 intelligence agency representatives signed off on that to say that this was Russian disinformation, which they know is not true. That's scary, because now you have the intelligence agencies colluding to keep a guy from being president that was president during a time where the country was thriving economically. You're not going to beat that guy.
Would he get your vote?
He'd get my vote before, excuse me, he'd get my vote before Biden. I said that before. I don't think that, I never thought that Biden was going to make it. I never thought that he was going to be functional. You know, like regardless of what kind of power the president actually has. And it appears under Trump, the president has a lot more power than we think they do. But under Biden, it's like he's handled. Like he's just out there talking and saying, the real problem is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, what he's done is terrible. What he did in the office. It's all nonsense. It's like everyone's treating him with kid gloves because they don't want to prop up Trump. They don't want to go after him because it'll weaken the Democratic Party.
So when are you having Trump on?
I don't know.
Okay. I
don't know. Maybe.
Looks like you got something.
Maybe.
Okay, good. That's good. I think that's...
Look, at a certain point in time, it's just like, it would be interesting to hear his perspective on a lot of things. I would like to know, what is it like when you actually get into office? I would like to know things like, what is it like versus perception?
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, it's funny because yesterday I made a video about YG, the F Donald Trump rapper, coming out here and saying that the hood, right, black people are now voting for Trump, or they want to vote for Trump in 2024 because, you know, they don't really like Biden's economy and et cetera, et cetera. And in that video, I basically argued that, honestly, I don't get excited about that anymore because it happens all the time, right? You have, you know, these black people who come out and say, hey, we're voting Trump, or we support Trump, or whatever. And then, you know, once the election comes around, whether that's the midterms or the general election or whatever, like the presidential election, black people are voting for Democrats at a 90+% clip, right? After all this momentum. So I really don't think when I see those clips, it actually really matters, okay? But I will say, when Joe Rogan does make these statements, I think it does matter because I think Joe Rogan actually does represent a class of voter that is the swing voter, right? They can have their votes be changed with facts, logic, and reason, okay? Even though it does seem that Joe Rogan is reluctant to vote for Trump, despite all the things he just said about how great the economy was and how great things were under Trump, whether that be the border, again, the economy. We didn't have so much of the crime, mainly because of the fact that we didn't have so many progressives in office locally that basically have created these soft on crime policies. We were definitely respected on the world stage much more. I mean, under Trump, this country was just in a much better place. And it's showing up in the numbers all over the place is also showing up in, the sentiment that you're seeing from the American people, whether that be in the polls or just on social media in general. And that is the reason why I think that Trump still has such strong support, is literally because people know how the economy was under him. And honestly, that's what really matters more than anything, unless you are a single liberal woman who it seems to me that abortion, right, the right to, kill your own baby or kill your own child is much more important than the economy. Again, we saw that happen during the midterms. The midterms were determined by single women who came out and voted simply because they were living in fear that abortion would be banned in their state, right? So again, for the most part, the economy decides the election. And that is why I think that Trump still has such strong support despite the indictments, despite all the other stuff, is because people understand that, hey, under the first, at very least 3 years of Trump before the COVID stuff, which I do kind of give Trump a mulligan on that, because nobody really knew how serious it was. Nobody knew what the hell they was doing COVID, right? And I can't really blame Trump for something that the whole world did, okay? And I mean, at the end of the day, it was an unprecedented thing. But anyways, everybody knew what the economy was like under the first 3 years of Trump versus what the economy is like now. And I think that people want that. People understand that this is what I'm getting. And that's why Trump is dominating in the GOP primary, and why I think he actually has a chance to win in the general election. People keep saying, oh, Trump has no chance. And I'm like, well, historically, again, the presidential elections comes down to the economy, right? If the economy is great, then the party that's in power will retain power. If the economy is not so great, then that person will lose their seat, right? The party that's in power will lose power. That's typically how most elections are determined, okay? And I think that this election is going to come down to the economy. How is the economy? How are people feeling about the economy once the election comes around in 2024? I think that's what it's going to come down to. But until then, again, the numbers aren't looking good, okay? As inflation is forcing Americans to spend $709 more per month than 2 years ago, according to economists. Again, this is Bidenomics. Americans are spending $709 more per month on everyday goods and services than they did 2 years ago, according to Moody's Analytics. Moody's chief economist, Mark Zandi, made the statement Friday on X, formerly known as Twitter, as part of his analysis of July's Consumer Price Index report. Despite the jarring increase in cost, Zandi says inflation is moderating, with just a 0.2% increase from June to July. And that's mostly because of the Fed, right? The Fed increasing interest rates, taking money out of the economy, trying to cool down the economy, doesn't really have anything to do with Bidenomics, right? It has more to do with the actions of the Fed more so than Biden. Quote, to be sure, the high inflation of the past 2+ years has done lots of economic damage. Due to the high inflation, the typical household spent $202 more in July than they did a year ago to buy the same goods and services, and they spent $709 more than they did 2 years ago, Zandi wrote. But the trend line looks good and suggests inflation is set to moderate further. Vehicle prices will decline more, so too will electricity prices, and the growth in the cost of housing will slow further. The biggest worry is the jump in oil prices, which bears close watching, he added. Scorching high inflation has created severe financial pressures for most U.S. households, which are forced to pay more for everyday necessities like food and rent. The burden is disproportionately borne by low-income Americans whose already stretched paychecks are heavily affected by price fluctuations. Consumers continue to see some reprieve. In July, the price of used cars and trucks tumbled 1.3% over the month and are down 5.6% compared with the same time 1 year ago. Airline tickets also plummeted 8.1% in July, following declines in both April, May, and June. Well, I can't tell, right? Flying seems to have gotten way more expensive. The data indicates that while inflation has fallen from a peak of 9.1%, it remains well above the Fed's 2% target. Despite an aggressive interest rate hike campaign, the U.S. Central Bank has approved 11 rate hikes over the course of 16 months, lifting the federal funds rate to the highest level since 2001. The Fed could resort to further interest rates hikes later this year, but the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has not made any announcements yet. Yeah, so that means that there could be more pain for the economy, okay, which, in my opinion, is not something that, I'm welcoming. I think that at this point, it is clear that Bidenomics has been a failure. I don't care what the liberal media says. I don't care what the Democrats say. Average, everyday, normal Americans are simply not feeling great. And I think that that is Trump's strongest tailwind going into the 2024 election, which is the economy. Okay, everybody knows what it was like under Trump. Everybody knows it was much better, and I think that's what people want more than anything. But hey, we'll see. The spoiler here again could be single liberal women who believe that their right, or quote unquote right, to abortion is much more important than their paycheck and their wallet. Really a damn shame that these women are deciding the direction of this country. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.